Okay. So would everybody unmute themselves? Okay, Jen, will you unmute yourself, and Joanne?
Joanne, is this you? I mean, Kate, is this you?
I'm all unmuted.
Kate, is this you on the phone?
Kate, can you hear us?
1301, 1301. I don't think it's on.
No, it's muted now.
Oh, wait a minute. I think I've got her. Kate, is that you?
Yes, it is. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I
Okay,
can hear
but
you
there's
fine, except for a little.
well, there's static, so you let me do the attendance, and could you mute yourself then?
Okay.
Kate Burke,
Here.
John Dykstra,
Here.
Joanne Guston,
Here.
Sheila Matthews Bull,
Here.
Jim Overhill,
Here.
Carol Sherman,
Here.
Jen Wasserman,
Here.
and I'm here. That's 8 of us. Okay. Before we get started with the agenda, I'm sure all of you know that not quite 2 weeks ago we lost a person who was an integral part of this community. Stu Barwise passed away suddenly. I'm not going to go through all the accolades. He was involved in the government, in the selectmen. He was involved in the town. He was the first selectman representative sitting with us in the Beach Advisory Committee. He, along with Bob Sherman, Paul Hogan, and others, were instrumental in drafting the beach use agreement, which created this committee. He was a mensch, and the usual definition is a good person, but the real definition is a person of integrity and honor. That was Stu Barwise, and he'll be sadly missed. Life's always not fair.
Got it.
So let's go on with the meeting. The approval of minutes for May 6th. Could I have a motion? Everybody was present. You've had gotten a draft from Kate. Any corrections? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Kate?
Yep.
John?
Aye.
Joanne?
Aye.
Sheila?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Carol, I think you have to abstain. You weren't.
Abstain.
Jen?
Yes, aye.
And I vote yes. All right. We had an election for a beachfront property owner, and the election was decisive. And our new member is Carol Sherman.
Yay!
Congratulations, Carol.
Thank you. Very happy to be a part.
Ready. So I mentioned Bob Sherman a few minutes ago, and Bob, as I said, pardon me? That's Kate. Oh, okay. All right. So, Bob was the first chair of the Beach Advisory Committee. He served on the committee for 7.5 years. He was term limited, so he could not run again. But he's given his heart and soul and body to this beach in many, many ways. And Bob, I just want to applaud you, and I'm sure all of the other members of the committee do.
Thank you, Rick.
Yes, over and over.
And there is a small token of appreciation from the town.
Oh,
And Carol has the gift, and Bob now has it in his hands. You're going to open it, Bob?
open,
I can open it?
open.
Oh, okay, this is big time. This is the biggest park wherever you want a Goose Rock Beach sticker I've ever had. This is really nice.
It's a lifetime resident permit.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, isn't that
Wow.
pretty?
Oh, isn't that
Wow.
nice?
Oh, no,
Show everybody.
That's beautiful. This is a beautiful beach, in case you haven't figured that out. Simply spectacular. Thank you very much. guys.
Very pretty.
That's very pretty. I appreciate it.
Bob,
Right,
Bob,
right.
we thank you for the years and years of service.
Thank you.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
That's good.
And our,
Richard, I'm sorry, can I just squeeze in a final report here?
sure.
Okay, I got with the help of some of the people here, we got the fencing done for the dune grass, and so forth down there.
Yeah,
I
it's,
committed to the town that we could do it for less than $500. In fact, I have today the final receipts, means that we did it for less than $300, and I'm pretty excited. And I want to thank all the people, including Kate and Jen, and Paul Lakin, who helped us. Janet came through, Paul Hogan again, and others, and Kate Bowerbrook and Jim. But we have done another round of saving the dune grass, and it's just going to make Goose Rock's Beach even better and healthier down the road. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Tremendous.
Sure work on that.
Tremendous.
Great.
thank you.
at our last meeting, there was some questions about access to our meeting. So our meeting is broadcast on Zoom, and it is done the same way the Board of Selectmen's meeting is done, the planning board, when the Board of Adjustment, the zoning board gets operational, it'll be the same. So there's no way that we can change how this meeting is held virtually. In terms of notice of the meeting, Joanne Guston puts something on constant contact with an abbreviated agenda. The town sends out an email with the agenda and instructions on how to get on the Zoom, and you can sign up for the town emails, and they will give you our agenda, the selectmen's agenda, and other things that are going on in the town, such as the rec department and what have you, where they have programs. So that's one way. And the other is just go on the town's website, and you can find our agenda, and the agenda will then include the instructions on how to get on.
And
Okay.
people can also watch the meeting on local cable on 1301 and on YouTube at Kennebunkport Television.
Can I ask a question? Am I
Sure.
unmuted or muted? Okay,
I
I
can hear you,
think,
Kate. Go ahead.
Let me turn it off.
Great. I think the question, and I think this is great, and I think as we are doing it this way, when we have to meet virtually, I think we are enabling people to participate, real time, by going to Zoom, etc. I think we saw that at the last meeting. And I think the point is well raised. Is there some way that hopefully at some point we will go back to meeting in the village firehouse meeting room or somewhere face to face? I think it's at that point that I'm concerned that maybe is there some way we can figure out so that people can, from away, because we do have a pretty high percentage of people, property owners over here who don't live here year round, and wouldn't even have access to the television broadcast, or maybe probably wouldn't even have access to the television broadcast wherever they are. But is there some way we can continue a way so that they can participate real time? And I am a total technophobe, so I'll admit that right up front. So I don't know how that could be done. In other words, if we went back to the meeting the way we used to have them, was there a way that people from a distance could see that and ask questions or make comments while the meeting was going on, rather than if you live in, you know, New York City and you don't have access to Kennebunkport local television, you presumably can't watch the meeting until after it's already happened.
I guess the question is, can we simulcast the meeting on Zoom or Facebook or what have you?
Yeah.
And it would not just be our meeting, but I assume the selectmen's meeting and so on. And that's a question that the town needs to answer,
Okay.
and whether or not technologically and cost-wise it can be done. I know in
Great.
one group that I'm in, well, actually it's a church, that we're doing it virtually now. And when we go back to the point of doing it in church services, it's going to be simulcast. And it's actually on Facebook. But
Hey, at least I
Laurie,
see
maybe
you
you
guys
can
on the.
take that discussion with David and the selectmen and see whether there is an answer to that. But because it's not just our committee.
Right. And it's not just an issue for I mean, it's not a critical issue right now because we'll be doing it this way, but maybe down the line when we can go back to, and us other committees can go back to person-to-person meetings, if we could explore that, that'd be great.
Okay, let me open the meeting for comments from the public on items that are not on the agenda. And I'd ask you that since we have 60 people on, we had a 2-minute rule last time, and we're going to do that again. So I'd ask you to be succinct with your question or your comment. And if everyone who has a question or comment it finishes, then we could go back to someone who did not finish. So, David, do we have anybody whose hand is up? I hope.
Eric Podolsky.
Hi, and could you tell us where you live, your property at Goose Rocks?
Yep. We're at the old Beechwood. We're in the back. We're in the cottages in the back. There's 84 units here. We live in Biddeford, but kind of like we winter in Biddeford, summer in Kennebunkport.
Okay.
Go south for the summer. That's good.
So, your question or comment?
Yeah. Again, I'm just asking with regards to the kayak storage. I understand that the kayaks were taken off, are going to be kept off the beach this year, and only those owners that have the 25-foot buffer will be allowed to store the kayaks there. Is that correct?
Well, and anyone who has the 25-foot buffer gives permission to someone. So in other words, if you know a beachfront property owner who's a signatory on the beach use agreement, and they allow you to put your kayak on their property, that's permitted. What we would ask is, contrary to the way it was done in the past, that you put your kayak parallel to the to the water as opposed to perpendicular to the water,
Yep.
so that it doesn't block people walking. And in that case, you won't have to push it so far up so that it damages the dune grass.
Okay. And is this going to be forever, or is this just for this year due to COVID?
Well, forever is a long time. I would suggest to you that it probably is going to be, at least for this foreseeable future.
Okay. And I have one more question or a comment regarding parking. I was wondering why we do not have kiosks as they do in Biddeford. I happen to be a parking control officer in Biddeford, and I was wondering why we do not have the same technology as Biddeford does.
Well, we're starting, maybe late, but we're starting. There'll be a kiosk at Kings Highway and Broadway, as well as stickers that can be purchased at the general store.
Wouldn't it be easier to have a kiosk at the general stores to eliminate putting the pressure on the store to do that?
That's really a tomorrow question.
Okay. All right. That's all.
I don't mean to be flippant about it, but it really is. The general store has done it for years, and we're sort of feeling our way this year. That this is not the usual opening of the beach and opening of the summer at Goose Rocks.
Okay. I'm just asking. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you, Eric.
David, anyone else?
It's Derek Weber. I'm at the corner of Broadway and Kings Highway, and I'd like to address the parking kiosk issue. I understand, Richard, that you consider it an issue of tomorrow, and I'm not sure if you all have read the letter I submitted, but using my voice and on behalf of our neighbors, and a couple of them are sitting here now, we're at the proposed intersection for that kiosk. And so I've been on all the calls, and I understand that you're trying to solve for a contactless method of providing parking tickets. But the problems you're creating from trying to solve that one problem are going to be larger. That is, and Chief Sanford could probably testify, that this small residential corner is one of the most heavily trafficked in terms of people looking for parking, stopped by the side, heavy path traffic. It is a non-commercial zone, and you intend to put a kiosk here. You're going to destroy the small neighborhood, and we're going to create a huge cluster of people waiting, stepping on people's lawns. I could take the camera out right now, and there's 5 people out there. Can you imagine during the season when you have a parking kiosk? There are 12 children under the age of 12 at 4 houses right on this intersection. You're putting their lives in danger with the extra traffic. You're putting their lives in danger with COVID-19. It is not a commercial area. If you're going to put a kiosk somewhere, put it in a commercial zone. I don't disagree with the kiosk, but our little corner is going to be very, very destructive. And I caution everybody on this call that if someone gets hurt, hit, congested, COVID-19, that decision comes from you as a group. And I seriously press you to reconsider its placement on either next to the tides where they want the traffic or behind the general store, as the other person suggested. And I can't say it in strong enough terms, and that is my message to you.
Okay, well, there are no commercial zones in Goose Rocks. There are non-conforming uses, which is the tides and the general store. And the corner in where the tides is Belvedere is also a neighborhood. There are residential houses up and down Belvedere. The issues have been, let me just, the issues have been, people have bought a sticker at the general store. Then they can't find a parking space. They come back to the general store. The general store is not in the habit of selling a sticker and then reimbursing when they can't find a parking space. So the idea was to have two places separated where people could buy a sticker and hopefully have a parking space and then buy the sticker, as opposed to parking close to New Bedford Road and having to walk all the ways back to the general store to get a daily sticker. Now the town is still going to sell stickers. The police department is not, but we will have both the kiosk and the general store. There's no good place with your argument that every intersection in Kings Highway is an intersection with residential property.
Well, the issue, there's another issue that you're not considering. If you actually drive down Kings Highway, and I've been on every meeting, so I understand your point, and you're trying to anchor it, and I'm not going to fight you on every point, but if you say that, that's not correct. There are what I'll call street side locations where when you come down Kings Highway, there is no recessed road on the beach side, right?
Except Jeffrey's Way.
Except Jeffrey's Way. And Jeffrey's Way, I'm sure the residents of that would be up in arms about it as well. But Jeffrey's Way creates a place, I mean, me, I'd say don't do it, followed by the police department or the general store or the Tides. If you absolutely have to have it, then I would choose a place where you can't have 20 cars piled up on Kings Highway and all that access. And Jeffrey's Way is the only place that offers that respite drag. And there are just so many times when you've got so many people, like just think about this year. This is a COVID-19 year. That is the top issue on everybody's agenda. That kiosk on this corner will create a level of congestion and a level of people that you're going to create more problems. I just really want to press you. If you have to put it somewhere, you absolutely have to. There's no other choice in your minds, which to me, I disagree with. Jeffrey's Way is the only recessed spot that anchors the other side of the general store. So I suggest you put it there.
Well, Jeffrey's Way, there's no turnaround. There is one parking space in Jeffrey's Way, and it's a handicap space.
Well, I can offer my driveway if you'd like, Richard. It's going to be a madhouse over here. It's really going to be. It's already a madhouse on this corner, and it's going to be more of a madhouse. I could put it at your house, but I mean, it's going to be crazy. I suggest you rethink it seriously.
Okay. Thank you, Derek. Sheila, you wanted to say something? You have to unmute yourself, Sheila.
I'm sorry, I had some background noise and I didn't want you to hear it. This is not the time. I think the gentleman made his point. We will take that into consideration and move on with the meeting. You know, I think we're getting off track.
David, anyone else? Can you unmute him?
I just did.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
Hi, Mr. Griswold.
Our family has a place at 26 New Bedford Road, and I was down at the end of May, and I just wanted to check to see if the calming devices / speed bumps were going back in as per the last 2 years.
One speed bump is already in, and the second speed bump, if you're going towards the beach, towards Kings Highway, it will be just before the bridge. But they need to drill the pavement, so they have to have a couple of crews out there.
All right. Well, that's great. And Police Chief, thanks for getting that done. I think it's made a big difference along New Bedford Road. And also thanks everybody for the work that you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You too.
David, anyone else? Okay. We're going to have to limit it to 2 minutes. John, you're the
I got it.
timekeeper, and limit it to things that are not on the agenda, please. So, Robert Gordon,
Yes, this has to do with the kayaks. Could I bring up an
That's
issue?
on the agenda.
it's on the agenda. We'll get to that.
All right, thank you.
David, next. Okay,
Hello?
and David, would you mute the other people and pull them off the panel? Ms. Danega?
Yes, hi. I speak on behalf of 282 Kings Highway, which is diagonal to the entrance that you're suggesting by Broadway. I just want to reiterate what Mr. Weber said. It is a very narrow street. You'd mentioned something about there was no other place for a turnaround. I had considered that, and the only other way for a turnaround would be for people to make the left onto Hayward and circle around through the neighborhood and then come out Broadway, which is also very narrow.
No, the turnaround that I was referring to was in Jeffrey's Way. It's a dead end without a turnaround.
Okay, that may be what you intend, but I would think people would instinctively go to the first left-hand turn, and then they would be heading through that small neighborhood, which is very heavily congested with children, riding bikes, my own children, 10 and under included. I have witnessed on multiple occasions in the last 2 weeks that I've been here, multiple times children almost being hit. Because,
well, you know, the people going through the neighborhoods, that has been something that's gone on every year because people don't find parking spaces and they turn around and they do go through the private street, the narrow streets, and they're not allowed to park on them. They are public streets, and they do have the right to do it. And if you're saying in the last 2 weeks, the kiosk hasn't been up.
no, but I'm sorry.
The sale of parking stickers for day trippers is not going to be until the 15th of this month.
I think what I'm doing is I'm imagining similar to when people are on their phones. They're just simply distracted by one more thing that they need to do, one more thing that they need to look for. They're looking for parking, they're looking for the entrance, now they're looking for a kiosk, and it's just one more thing for them to attempt to do. And I just don't think it's the right place to do it.
Okay. As Sheila said, we will take it under advisement. Thank you.
Thank you.
David, anyone else? Okay. Mr. Mills.
Yes, hi, this is Robin Milnes. And just to follow on the parking kiosk discussion, our home is at 278 Kings Highway.
Richard.
And while I agree that there has to be a place for people to turn around, I don't think it's appropriate for our driveways along that highway to be the turnaround spot, and that is what will happen.
All righty, thank you. You know, we've gotten the message. You and your neighbors have all spoken to it. And if there's someone who has their hand up and something new, David, would you unmute them? With his hand up?
If it's anything but kiosk. I know.
David, just unmute him and we'll see, and we can he's still muted.
There you go. Is that better? Okay, I don't want to beat a dead horse with the parking.
Good.
Okay, we're finished with the kiosk.
Okay, no, hold on 1 second, okay? All I'm suggesting to you, if you guys have not taken the liberty to see what we do in Biddeford at the beaches, okay? It worked, again, we put the kiosks in last year on the beaches. They worked. There were some issues in how we do it. You also have an app that you can go, that's available to anybody, that you can buy your permits through the app. Okay. We also don't have parking issues, and again, the parking's different than it is at
Look, we've gone over this enough, and we got the message. We know you don't want the kiosk there. The town will take a look at it. I can't make you any promises, but we will take a look at it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. All right. There's been a suggestion about signs for dogs. And I know that Carol has drafted a couple, and the question is, do we want any more signs? Do we want the signs on maybe the general store? Since it is really a issue we're talking about Goose Rocks, we don't need them all around town. So I'm sure all of you have read the emails and seen what Carol has drafted. What's your pleasure?
Oh, this is Kate. Okay, am I unmuted or ready to talk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I like Carol's signs very much because they focus on the exact times of the season that we need to really focus on for summer visitors. And I think they're easy to read. I've expressed my opinion in the past that I thank all the work that the committee did on coming up with the dog ordinance, but I don't think certainly it's terribly easy. It's complicated. But I want to bring it down to, and I've always thought that the signs on the beach, the ones we've had for years, are not easy to read and don't focus on the times that we have the most people on the beach, which is the summertime, the June 15th to September 15th or 30th, whatever it is. And in this day and age, I mean, people need simple to try and understand it. So I do think in the brochure, it improved it somewhat, the new brochures that were put together. I agree with other people too that, you know, we get a little sign weary at times. I mean, where would we put these? People undoubtedly don't want to be, I think, probably putting more signs at the entrances, since we have even more than usual this year with the social distancing and between social distancing and plovers and everything else, we've just got a lot of even more signs, it seems, this year. So while I support I think these signs are very clear and easy to understand and eye-catching. I'm not quite sure how to suggest that we distribute them and use them, though. So I'm open to other people's thoughts too.
I mean, certainly we could put one at the general store, but the question is, do you want to put them at the entranceways, and the signs with the dog rules has other information on it? And we have an additional sign this year because of the COVID-19 about social distancing. And you know, that's the issue. I mean, if I had my druthers, we'd have a bunch of stop signs on the intersections with Kings Highway, but nobody except maybe the chief of police agrees with me.
Stop signs?
I think with all the signs that we have, if you put another one up, you've got to take something down. I mean, it's getting a little ridiculous. The more you have, the less people are going to read. So if you put it up at the store, which is heavily used in the summer, and if each real estate agent that's renting places, each maybe hotel in the area, you know, I don't know, give them a stack of them so their people can see as well. You put another sign up, I think you have to take one down.
Is there anyone who wants to make a motion?
I'd like to say a couple things. I agree, and I know we do not like signs. And this is sort of not that people had to do this, but it was opening a brainstorming of what we can do about signs that make signs be effective instead of just put up another sign that says, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. So that's what I did. And my out of the box thinking is, let's direct these to dog people. And where are and I'll hold this up like, here's one of them, right? Did I do that right, David?
Doing good.
Okay. Where I thought we might do it, because we've divided it into different times of the year, is put it on the town's website. So it's very clear. We have from June 15th to June 30th, these are the rules, and that makes it clear. On the general store, I have seen where you can have it's a wooden enclosed structure that obviously we'd have to have permission, that attaches to the side of the general store, where we could have notifications put up that it wouldn't get wet or from the rain. And that would be another place. Places where they have dogs. I wrote them down, I can't even remember now. Sandy Pines is dog friendly. I would ask them if we could put a sign there. The resort at Goose Rocks is dog friendly. Conservation Trust is dog friendly. I thought about the veterinary's office. The goal was to catch something that a dog person would look at instead of just rules. And I too don't want any more signs on the beach. And I know 2 signs that can come down, Joanne. I'll show them to you. But anyway, that's just the thought. This is nothing that I think, I'm only presenting it as a brainstorming idea, not as something that I think you need to implement what I did. As something I doodled with on the computer.
How about if we start with putting one up at the general store with their permission?
Richard?
John?
Richard, I really like the idea of having a enclosed bulletin board at the general store, if they were willing to, if there was a place to put it, where people would know that they could go and just see what the overall situation is on the beach, and have the drone, have everything there in one place that's well displayed. If somebody says, hey, what can I do this? Say, well, go to the general store, check it out. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, John, can I comment on that? Kate.
Go ahead, Kate.
We thought we thought about that, I remember a couple of years ago, and I did go to the general store because the Goose Rocks Beach Association, the community house, has a very, very nice, very good looking wooden structure there that they can put in their notices. And, I found out that had been created by somebody who has long since passed away or is no longer doing it, unfortunately. But I think it would be a great idea if we could go to the general store people and say, if we can find one made somewhat like that, could we put one up there? And that would be, the BAC or the beach advisory things, and put something like this sign in there. The other place, by the way, Carol, that it just occurred to me as you were suggesting places that we might visit is the community house itself, and see if because a lot of the families that have kids that go there and that are in and out at the things there, they've got a bulletin boards there that maybe they'd let us put something up there.
Well, maybe we could build 2 of these and use some of the beach money. And that sounds like an excellent use of our reserve beach money, to be able to do something well and have it be effective.
Okay.
Yes, I agree.
Well,
all right, you want me to...
in order to do it, 1, we have to see whether we can get permission. 2, we have to get the cost. And then we have to get the permission of the selectmen to appropriate the money.
Well, we have the whole month of June.
And I might have an idea later on in the meeting.
Well, is there anyone who would like to volunteer to see whether the general store and the association would permit an
I'll do
enclosed
that.
full board? Is that
Yeah, Richard, I'll do it. Kate.
okay? And
So
you'll,
And I actually think I know of somebody who's like a pretty good carpenter. I might be able to
Good,
trot him down there and say, do you think you can build something like this?
good.
And he's always been modest in his prices for things that he's done around for our house. So I'll take on that to see if I can gather the information. Can we get permission? And how much would this maybe cost to put together?
Thank you, Kate.
okay. So,
Richard,
Does that need a motion?
you do have a hand up.
That's Paul. Yeah, yeah.
sure.
Okay, there we go.
Hey, Paul.
I thought there was a great suggestion a couple meetings ago to put a sticker on the big handsome sign that's at each entrance to cover up the confusing this season, last season, next season, and it would just be the summer, and then it could be taken off at the end of the summer. So it would say what the rules are for the summertime. And we wouldn't have to redesign, you wouldn't need multiple signs. You could put something on the existing sign for that amount of space, have it stick on, take it off for the fall, because most of the visitors are obviously here in 2 months.
Right.
That makes a lot of
Interesting
sense.
idea.
It draws people's
Yeah.
attention to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But Kate, do you want to take that on as well to see whether that, or John is volunteering?
Well, I'll do this. I'll do the stickers.
Okay, all right.
I would suggest we just go back to the gal who designed it so lovely, Bethany, and she could just typeset it if somebody can't easily to fit that.
That's perfect. I know Bethany well, so that actually works well. No problem. She's
Thanks.
great. Work with her.
Thanks, Paul.
She's great. Thanks, Paul.
Great.
Richard?
Ready.
Richard? Hi,
Jim.
Jim. Yeah, I want to make two comments. First, I think the sign is very clear, and it's one of the clearest ones I've ever seen to explain it. And second, it's my same old tune. If we're going to have rules and regulations and publish them, they need to be enforced. There's not a morning or an afternoon that doesn't go by when there aren't at least 3 or 4 dogs roaming loose still on the beach now, including running near the plover areas. So, we got to have the enforcement if we're going to have them. If not, forget it.
Ready. Thanks, Jim. We're going to have some new brochures this year, and they're not going to be the flashy colored ones that we've had before. It's going to be black and white. We're just in case there are some changes, and Joanne is
modeling.
Yeah, putting one up. In conjunction with that, there's an area on the brochure that talks about reserved areas. So I just want to talk about that for a minute. There are, I believe it's 65 properties. Some of the properties, such as the ones owned by the trust, are multiple lots, but there are 63 properties that are part of the beach use agreement. And those properties have reserved areas. None of the other properties on the beach have a reserved area. So we have a little bit of a mix and a match and a checkerboard in terms of the use of reserved areas. One, the reserved areas cannot block people walking, but the property owner there has the right to store his kayak or her kayak, give permission to others to store beach equipment there. And there are some of the rules such as camping and storage and what have you, that apply only to the reserved areas and not to the other 40 some odd properties on the beach. So when you're using the beach, there you will see that there are some properties that have a use that is prohibited elsewhere. And it's unfortunate. It creates a problem in terms of enforcement and what have you. But that is a result of the lawsuit and the beach use agreement.
Richard, can I ask a question on that? Because I think this issue has come up in a number of different contexts, kind of relating to enforcement of various things. You know, certain things are with the people that have the potential of a 25-foot reserve area, and then people that don't, et cetera, with whether it relates to kayaks or whatever. And it's very confusing, of course, for anybody like the community safety officers, the police officers, whoever, or even to the general public, to see certain things allowed or fine, it seemed to be fine in front of one house. Well, why can't I do it in front of another? And I know we don't want a lot of additional signs, but isn't there some way we can, I don't know, put something visible from the beach side, some small something that says, yeah, these guys have our beach use agreement signatories? I don't know how otherwise you can differentiate for the.
Well, I know that it's a problem when you're on the beach. There is a map. I believe it's on the town website that delineates.
Yeah, but that.
Yeah, I know it's not the greatest to read, but it does delineate those properties, and unfortunately, it's something that we're going to have to live with at least for the foreseeable future. I mean, maybe there is a way at some point in time to have some uniformity, and I don't know when or how. I mean, we just had a property owner, and actually he has asked us to chime in on the issue. He was a plaintiff in the case.
I know.
No, let me finish.
I'm not asking. Okay.
No, let me finish.
No, I get. Yeah.
So he was asking to have permission to have storage of kayaks on his property, a kayak rack. And the selectmen the other night voted unanimously that it isn't just Goose Rocks or his property, it's town property, and no one can store anything on town property without the town's permission. But the individual involved asked whether he could sign the beach use agreement in order to have the 25-foot reserved area. And that's just not possible, because the beach use agreement acknowledges, for those 65 properties, acknowledges that the owner of the street front property owns the beach to the low tide. And and in return, the town received an easement over that property. So to allow anybody else to sign the beach use agreement would mean that you would acknowledge that they own the beach. And that's just
Richard, but I'm not asking for that. I'm not.
No, I'm talking about the request that was the request of the property owner, that we consider whether or not we would recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they allow him to store kayaks on his property. And I for one, say it's a slippery slope. There are 40 some odd properties that are not part of the beach use agreement, and to allow it on one, you're going to have to allow it on all. I'm sorry, Kate.
Okay, but I'm not addressing the issue of coming to uniformity in any way. And I agree with you on the issue of somebody now joining into the beach use agreement. I'm simply saying, from the standpoint of somebody, whether it's a community safety officer or a police officer who's called to the beach because there's an issue that's developed, and there may be a different way of handling it if they're dealing with a property that's a beach use agreement signatory. I'm saying, is there some way, some tag that can be attached to the rock wall or set up by the dune grass or something that shows which house, which properties are beach use signatories? It's just an IDing type thing that would seem to maybe help people figure out, oh, yeah, that it's okay. If a community safety officer is walking along and he sees a kayak, on a property, I don't think they necessarily are going to go inquire, but that, yes, this is a beach use signatory, so that person is allowed to store their kayak close into their property.
I agree with you, Kate.
Interesting.
It is an issue. It's a problem for the police and the CSOs. But to put signs on 65 pieces of property along the beach, I don't think you're going to have much
Well, it's something
support for
we can
that.
take into consideration. It's something we can take into consideration and discuss at another time.
Yep, that's fine. I'm just asking, throwing it out there and asking whether it
not
had ever
gonna-
been discussed before, so that's
Right,
fine.
Great idea.
A question, Richard?
Yeah,
Do the members of the police force who are patrolling back and forth in their cars here, and do the CSOs have with them in some form a little cheat sheet that shows who the property owners are who signed it? There should be one in every police car, and there should be one that you could fold up and put in the CSO's pocket.
I don't know the answer to that question, Jim. The chief is on, and possibly he could answer that.
I mean, it might be helpful to them if we had it, and it should be easy enough to do.
Good evening, folks. Yes, we do go over this with the new officers when they come on. Officers do have them, but it's not just an easy little cheat sheet. That's quite a long list. So we do have it, and we do refer to it when we need to.
I mean, the map, Chief.
Yep,
It's not
we
the
have
whole
the map
list,
as
it's just
well.
the map. Yeah.
We have the map and the name, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
And CSOs too should have it.
Yep.
All righty. David, do we have anyone with their hand up? Okay.
Hi.
Paul?
I guess this is my night for stickers. I think there's a simple solution for the kayaks on the beach, and that is we have lovely logos for the beach committee. We have a couple hundred of them made up, and we mail 5 or 4 or whatever the number is to each person in the beach use agreement, and they can put them on their boats to help the chief out. And if they want to let their neighbor park on their lot, they put it on. It gets a permanent sticker giving permission, and it would help enforcement know what boats are permitted there and what people are, what boats are not.
I like that.
A much better
Step towards
solution.
registering kayaks, which I still think we ought to do, but it's a step
I
in the right
don't think you
direction.
need to register it because it's the property owner who has the right to put their boat down there and to give the right, to extend the right to their friends. So if we send each person 3 and someone and says they want 2 more, that's fine. But we mail it to them. We don't have to have anyone come into the office, and they can do with them what they want.
Good idea.
That's a much better
idea.
solution than labeling the property. This, just put your sticker on the kayak and you're good to go. I like that.
Doesn't solve
Good
all
job,
the problems, but it solves this one problem.
Yeah, as long as we're not giving out the stickers willy-nilly, because it's really easy to say, here, have one, here, have one.
No,
So they've got to go just to the homeowners, to the.
I'm just saying, yep.
You guys agree on what the number is, and then you mail them out. You have them made up and you mail them out by the 4th of July.
All right, we'll look into it. Something to look into.
Well, I think you need to approve it tonight. I think you need to make a motion tonight and then get it done, because otherwise it won't happen by the summer. And you put a new rule into effect and everybody's concerned about it.
I would have to look into it a little further.
Lori,
Lori?
you're
Yes.
muted.
Yes, yes,
Did you hear Paul's suggestion?
I did.
Is there any way of accomplishing it by July 4th? And is it, I mean, the issue that Sheila raised, the town mails 4 stickers to
And then
John
they're
Doe.
going to neighbors.
And John Doe's neighbor is not part of the beach use agreement, but he gives his neighbor a couple of them.
But he has the right to do that. He has the right to let his neighbor, even if he's not part of the beach agreement.
No,
put kayak on
his
the-
neighbor using it for his property.
Ah,
Yeah. Aha, yeah.
Aha.
So
That-
that's a wrinkle that I don't know how we can control.
Well,
by
if,
registration.
no, but
Yeah,
am I still on?
you're
Yeah,
still
you are.
on, Paul.
Yes.
You got 10 seconds, Paul.
Okay,
Okay,
so
go ahead.
if the community safety officers are walking the beach and they see a kayak in front of 216, I'm making up that number, and 216 has no right to have kayaks, then we know that that kayak shouldn't be there.
Yeah, but that's just an additional thing. That's like putting a kayak there now.
But it's easier than the police.
So if somebody has a
job now.
sticker, the police officer's gonna walk right by because they're gonna say, oh, look at the sticker. I think we need to look into this a little bit further.
Jen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I can just say, I mean, I think it's a great idea, and I think that, even if you mailed out 2 or 3, or say 2, and then people could request more, I don't think there'd be many people who'd be giving them out to their neighbors. I do realize it could happen, but I think it would probably be better than the situation where it's been, where, there have been upwards of 30 kayaks at the end of Jeffrey's Way. So I think it would make the problem better. Would it be perfect? Maybe not, but I do like the idea. I think it's a nice, it's an improvement of probably over what we have.
Anybody willing to make a motion?
So can I just say,
Lori?
I mean, you do have some other people with their hands up who I think would probably like a comment, but I don't see that we've engaged the beachfront owners who are signers in this conversation. And so I can mail out stickers, but if I don't want to put a sticker on my kayak for some reason,
Well, you don't have a kayak.
then are we meeting that goal is all. So all I'm saying is, I think it's a simple solution that Paul has come up with, and it certainly could work. I would remind everybody that people are very tense right now for all kinds of reasons. And I think they would probably like to be engaged in the conversation.
And Lori, just a quick question. If this is Kate, and this doesn't solve the issue for this year. I think it's a great idea. Whether we can get it done for this year, I don't know. But I'm wondering whether somehow it could be included in next year's mail out for the parking stickers. If you were a beachfront owner, and then in the same way as the parking stickers, you have to have the register. Your license plate goes on the parking sticker, taken off the registration that you have to copy. You have to submit. I mean, if we limit it obviously to beachfront signatories, and you have to put on the sticker the number of the house, like 216, or it's obviously got to be somebody on Kings Highway.
Sheila?
I was going to say,
this
why,
is sort of,
if we were going to do stickers, why don't we have the beachfront owner request a sticker? Not everybody has a kayak. Not everybody puts their equipment on the beach. So if you have a kayak, then request a sticker. And if you want 2, request 2, and then have some kind of registration for it. So to send out 2 to everybody willy-nilly is, to me, where we're going to get into trouble.
Why not,
Yeah,
why
I
not
agree.
do a
Sheila, I
survey?
agree.
Why not do a survey of the 65 properties? Just a simple questionnaire and ask them whether they would be supportive. And I would think it would not be limited to kayaks, but some other beach equipment, because the whole idea is to make it easier for the police and the CSOs to recognize the properties that have the reserved area.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
So
And I think it's an idea that should, as you said, do a little bit more thinking through and talking with Lori and see what can be done through the, maybe in connection with the mail outs for the parking stickers, maybe checking with the UA signatories, beachfront signatories, and gauge the interest level. That doesn't solve problems for this year, but at least we're, staking the dune grass, asking people to put their kayaks parallel to, maybe that's one step for this year, and we look at this more thoroughly, including the possibility of registration for next year.
Is there anybody willing to make a motion to do a survey of the 65 properties and a questionnaire in terms of some
Do
sort
we
of
need a motion?
detail?
Do we really need?
Well, let's see whether there is support for the idea. So can I have a motion?
Do we need a motion?
Well, do you want us to do it and explore it or not?
Yes.
And if you want us to explore it, then I would think we need a motion.
Then let's have one. I move that we survey the 65 signatories to the beach use agreement to measure their pleasure or displeasure with the concept of having stickers assigned or for them to use to mark and identify watercraft and other material that they're storing in the beachfront. It's way too long, but something like that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Kate?
I do.
Yes.
John?
Aye.
Joanne?
Yes, yes, yes.
Sheila?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay.
And you do have just, 3 people with their hand up.
Oops.
Okay, you got 3 people, Richard.
Okay. Ms. Corby?
I think I may be too late for this comment, but I'm wondering if there have been complaints from people who have signed the beach use agreement. Has there been an issue with specific properties, and are we raising concerns about something that is really not a big issue with everyone involved?
Well, the everyone involved includes the police and the CSOs that are out there, and there is clearly an issue in terms of on the beach side identifying the properties that are signatories to the beach use agreement.
But I'm asking if the people who signed it have been complaining.
Jennifer, I think, has a response to that.
Jen?
Yeah, specifically, there's been a problem at the end of Jeffrey's Way, because there's so many people that access the beach that way. As you know, it's the access point for everybody on Sand Point, and it's the access with all the new development at Binnacle Hill. So there's an ever increasing number of people that enter the beach at that point. And there have been upward of 30 kayaks stored at the end of Jeffrey's Way without, permission of the beachfront owners. And the problem with that is that if you look particularly on the right-hand side of Jeffrey's Way, the grass, the dunes have really been retracted in that location. because of there been such a huge volume. So yeah, that it has been an issue, at least in that location.
The other thing, way back when, there was some discussion of establishing a place for kayaks, like at Dinghy Point was one of the places that I think people had talked about as having some racks for kayaks, or I am concerned that something that has been a casual agreement over the years will suddenly become a major issue. I understand the Jeffries Way situation, and that makes sense, especially with Binnacle Hill. But I think in other parts of the beach, there has been a pretty reasonable agreement among neighbors to have kayaks there, and I hate to ruin that by setting up rules that will invite controversy.
Well, we do have the issue of who owns the beach, and there are 40 some odd properties that either were part of the lawsuit or were supporters of the lawsuit, and the town owns the beach, and to store anything on the town property requires the permission of the town. I know where you're heading, and I wish that I could turn the clock back and get to where you want to be, but I can't do that, and nor can anybody else. Okay.
Oh, yes, can you hear me now? Okay, just on the kayaks.
Bill, what's your last name and where's your property?
Bill Casey, and I have unit C9 at the resort at Goose Rocks, a former neighbor of Carol's. On the issue of the stickers, it's a great idea, but in the past, Alex, who was part of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, gave out orange stickers for us to put on kayaks. The problem is with use of the kayaks in the water, whether it's the salt water or the rough water, the stickers tend over a short period of time to come off. They don't stay on. And so you may want to consider whether you require the people to stencil with a permanent marker the kayaks themselves, which is more permanent. I end up stenciling it every year. And the other comment I was going to make is in past years, I want to say shortly beyond Edgewood, some gentleman would come along and he installed piping away from the piper area, the plover area, but he installed piping for people to tie up on the public beach some kayaks. I'm not sure if you're going to do that this year. But
no, what we're saying to people is, if you have the permission of the property owner,
okay,
and the property owner is a signatory of the beach use agreement,
okay,
you can store your kayak, but you must store the kayak parallel to the water as opposed to perpendicular to the water.
Okay, the other last comment I'll make is you want to have the people have their either first initial, last name, and their phone number on the kayak.
Well, John Dykstra would like us to have the kayaks registered, and I agree with him. But we're not going to be able to do that for this season. Okay. But all we're doing now is a survey of the property owners to see where they are, and we'll take into consideration what you said. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Dave?
I have a, yes, I just did. I have another question about this, and that is, how sure are we about monitoring all of this? I mean, while there is a police presence on the beach, there are a lot of things that we have as rules, but I have not heard of a lot of activity around stopping people from neglecting to follow these rules. So if we now have kayaks with registration and everything else, you know, phone numbers, then who's going to be watchful of this? I don't, is the Kennebunkport Police Department going to sign on to all of this? I guess this is a question for Lori. I mean, who's going to be responsible for making certain that these rules are followed? I don't see the dog rules being monitored very carefully, and I'm not objecting to them, but they're not monitored.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Corby.
Carol?
I may be wrong, but hasn't Chief Sanford already have a plan for what to do this summer with biodegradable tags and how we're going to deal with it?
Beach equipment is, take it in, take it out. And the CSOs will have tags to with something that's left overnight, warning them that that they cannot leave their equipment on the beach overnight. Okay. And that includes tents and what have you. All right. We need to have a motion to request funding from the town for the staking and roping. And Bob indicated it was less than $300. Can I have a motion?
Hang on. It may end up being slightly more than that. I was out working today, staking more, and I believe Bob has delivered to my house all the remaining stakes he bought, and I have about 8 or 9 left, and there are areas we haven't done yet. So it's not going to go over that 500 by any means, but it's probably not going to just be 300.
Why don't we have a motion of up to $500?
Yes, that'll be fine.
Right. Second.
Any discussion? Kate?
Yes.
John?
Aye.
Joanne?
Aye.
Sheila?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Aye.
Carol? Jen? And I vote yes. All right. This year there has been a volunteer effort supported by the Beach Advisory Committee to stake the dune grass. And I don't know, Jen, do you want to report on it? You've had permission from any number of property owners, and there's still some to go.
Yeah, so we've we had a group of us out last Wednesday or the Wednesday before, and we staked the tides, area in front of the tides, and the conservation land, and so they were both, those owners were fine with us doing that. And then we have staked the Jeffries Way 2 houses towards the tides, from Jeffries Way 2 outs towards the tides so far. And a lot of the to the left of Jeffries Way is now staked because of the plovers anyway. And we have permission from from the one house that is not staked so far. I got permission today, so we're that'll probably be done tomorrow. So what's left is there's an area to beyond the tides to Dingy Point that has not been done, and I don't know if anyone has spoken to the owners
Yeah,
of the
I
property.
did. Jen, I tried to reach the 4 owners of properties from the tides west to the Dingy Point, or where the seawall starts. I found 2 of them home. None of those, by the way, are beach use signatories, but we've been asking, at least providing notification in a very friendly way. And I reached 2 of them that were there, and they were both very happy to hear about it being done. And the other 2 houses did not have anybody there. One looked like at least that nobody's even come up and opened it up for the summer. So I think we just go ahead and complete that area up to the Dingy Point. And then we were going to turn our attention to the west end, but I've been advised by Bob Sherman particularly that he doesn't think that's necessarily the highest priority, because he feels that the dune grass area there, first of all, it's not as heavily trafficked as the east end of the beach is. And secondly, the dune grass area there is pretty much already staked off because of the plovers. That's a big plover activity area. So unless somebody else feels very differently, Carol, I'm not going to pursue starting to research, who we have to contact there for this summer so
Hey,
far.
what about east of the tides? That is east of Belvedere. There's
Everything.
There's Lanky.
Yeah, everything.
Emmons.
Yeah, I mean, Paul and Jen we're going to be contacting everybody east of the tide. Oh, I think Lanky has been contacted by Paul.
Yeah,
I think it's from the conservation point on that we were the end of the conservation point. I think it's where house by that big taupe-colored house that sits where you start picking up houses actually sitting on the beach side of the road. And
yeah,
I
there
think
are
that's
there are about 4 or 5 houses there that have not been staked yet, and I don't know if anybody has spoken to those owners yet. So that's sort of next on my list.
Okay, I'll help you if you want.
Okay.
So contact, knock on doors there or whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
So I had a question today, and it was sort of, is the dune grass more important than persons?
Yeah.
In terms of staking off the dune grass. And John, you're sort of a maven on this. Could you briefly talk about the value and importance of the dunes?
Yeah, I'd ask what dimension of people they're talking about. Obviously, someone's life, no, but someone's right to put a kayak on dune grass, yeah, it's a heck of a lot more important. And the thing about the dune grass, there was a comment made during our last meeting that the storms all come in the winter, so why are we so darn concerned about dune grass in the summer? Well, the issue is that the dunes are the only defense against the storms, no matter when they come, to protect town and personal property. And the grass, the dune grasses, above ground, when the wind blows, they capture sand. They prevent the sand from continuing to blow, and it builds up around the stalks, and that is the seed, if you would, that creates the dunes and allows a dune to grow. Beneath the surface, those roots hold the sand so that when a storm does come, it is far more resistant to erosion. And the issue is that these are reeds of the reed family, and I'm out of my league here, but my understanding is those reeds are very fragile, and once they are broken, the plant dies. And when the plant dies, the roots die. And when the roots die and the plant goes, as goes the dune grass, goes the dune. So the reason we need to protect it is so that it will continue to build and hold the dunes so that when the storms of spring and winter do come, there is a barrier against erosion to protect our homes and our town infrastructure.
John.
Richard, can I speak to that too, briefly?
Sure.
I was out there the day we were doing the staking. I was approached by, also Bob was approached by a beach goer raising the same question, complaining that we were now staking off part of the beach, and the plover area was also staked off, and that this was taking areas away from the fact that, people's enjoyment of the beach. And, I tried to explain to her that again, as John suggested, the value, the importance of the dune grass. And I guess somewhat my response to this too is 3 years ago when we had the really bad spring with the really bad nor'easters that basically lopped off about almost 50% of the dunes.
Riley.
So for people to complain now that we are, in some cases we were extended out farther than just, right along the edge of the dune grass, because Paul and other people who were more knowledgeable than I were identifying that, even though we didn't have big tufts of dune grass starting to come up, we had some of them starting, and you could tell from the topography there, the way the sand was starting to build up into starting the birth of a dune, so to speak. So we were trying to be wary of that and keep that area roped off too. So, but when I think back to what we had, how much farther out the dunes used to come and how much we lost in those storms, we're not necessarily trying to take away a lot of the beach. We're trying to restore it to what it was, and how incredibly important that protection is. And I think the people I talked to who had homes right on the beach were happy to see it happening, because they realized how important this is, and maybe they remember the damage that occurred to properties on the beach, or that didn't occur because of the dunes protecting them. So.
Ready, thanks, Kate. The next item is kayak storing on the beach, and I think we've
pretty much covered
really covered that in prior discussions. So, Carol, a plover report?
Oh, Carol.
You're muted.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, shoot.
This is sort of my other hat, and I want you to know I'm not half as emotional about kayaks, sewer, recycling, and anything like that, but this is about the plovers. So, piping plover lease turn report as of May 29th, 2020. My husband says it's a little long, but it's very complicated. So, at their last meeting, Beach Advisory Committee asked for and received a $3,000 commitment from the Board of Selectmen to pay for a volunteer coordinator for the piping plover project at Goose Rocks Beach for this year. The volunteer coordinator salary was to be paid by the town, and the volunteer was to be hired and trained by Maine Audubon, an arrangement that has worked well for the past several years. Well, when I contacted the Maine Audubon to tell them the good news, I was told that the human relations person that does all the hiring had just passed away unexpectedly, and they did not know when or if we would be able to hire a volunteer coordinator for Goose Rocks Beach this year. So the season already started. We had birds nesting on the beach. I admit panic did set in. Barbara Bywise stepped up.
Oh.
She and I became co-head monitors. Now a monitor we're the people that check the birds and educate the public and walk on the beach. A volunteer position. Barbara said she would take the east end, I would take the west end, and that is how we stand today. That said, Barbara is given all the grace that she needs. Fortunately, one of the Maine Audubon seasonal biologists, Francesca Dundrum, has been really helpful. She has written outstanding reports with maps showing where the nests are located and has been very responsive to all of our requests. Monitors, you know what they are now. For example, Algonquin and Wells each have over 30 piping plover monitors. We have 4, including Barbara and myself, and as they say, we are understaffed. We are always looking for volunteers, but honestly, though Maine Audubon is questionable at this time. Training through Maine Audubon is questionable at this time. They will try, but they do not know if it can be done. So for this year, we need everybody to help us and be knowledgeable, aware, and observant and kind. I repeat, be kind. We are not the enforcers. Call the police or the CSOs if you observe any behavior you think is harmful to the plovers or terns. The state of Maine is having an excellent year with a number of piping plovers. You may have read it in the paper. There are 102 pairs of piping plovers and 81 nests throughout the state. 5 beaches have 8 to 11 pairs. We're not one. Goose Rocks Beach does have 5 active nests with 4 eggs in each, which is really great news. Sadly, we had 3 nests abandoned and 1 nest predated earlier. Maine Audubon said that it is now absolutely essential that we give these 5 pairs plenty of space as the eggs get closer and closer to the hatch date. And really, we could have chicks on the beach at any moment. The location of the birds this year has been especially difficult. I blamed it on the uncrowded beach, the strong winds, and that the plovers have an inability to read my signs. They are on the west end, east end, and on the middle of the beach. Maine Audubon just recently discovered a nest with 4 eggs near Dyke Road. Linda Hanna, you were right. Can you believe it? There's a nest near Dingy Point and Dyke Road. These are courageous, and they are going to need our help. Game cameras are up and working day and night near the plovers' nests. Hopefully, they'll be able to identify any predators before the predator could cause any harm to our birds. Maine Audubon saw, and I quote, an unbelievable amount of cat tracks on the west end, end quote. Please keep your cats inside during the plover tern season. We could use your help locating and educating kindly the owners of cats that allow their cats outside, especially at night. It is not the cat's fault. It is a cat owner problem. Sessa, our seasonal biologist, wrote this, and I thought I would share it with you. And I quote, our first chicks of the season started hatching late last week, and we already lost 4 chicks at one of the nests at Old Orchard Beach. The evening the chicks were hatching, there were people lined up with cameras against the management. Management is a term that Audubon uses for the stake and twine, for hours, trying to capture the moment, end quote. If you do not give plover parents enough space, the birds can and will abandon their chicks, and the chicks will die. And that is what happened at Old Orchard Beach. I think this is especially sad because the loss of these chicks was caused by people that had interested and cared about the piping plovers and did not have adequate knowledge. Everyone needs to give these birds space and step away from the management, which we all know is stake and twine. Get a pair of binoculars, and I promise you it is the very best way to observe piping plovers. I know and understand that not everyone has a love of the piping plovers like the monitors do. I have heard they take up too much space, they taste like chicken, they will eventually die off anyway. Amen. 20 years ago, when we bought our home at the West End, I felt the same way. Since then, I have learned about the piping plovers and my feelings have changed. Now I think we can and should responsibly share our beach with this endangered species. It is good for the birds, it's good for us. It's good for the community as a whole, and it's good for the earth. Dog lovers and owners. A difficult reality has come to the surface. It really is not a dog problem, it's a dog owner problem. For years that I've thought it was the day trippers, the one-week renters, the people who were from away that did not know about or just did not follow our dog ordinance. Well, for the past several months, we have only had town residents allowed to park at Goose Rocks Beach and town residents using the beach. And I'm very thankful for that. And for the past several months, we have had lots and lots of complaints about dogs running free, especially near the piping plover areas. Guess what? It's not them, it's us. And by the way, Barbara and I are big dog lovers. I think I can speak for the both of us that we feel that owners, dogs, and plovers can both enjoy and share our beach. My experience is that your children, grandchildren, will love to learn about the birds. What an opportunity we have to share with our family and friends to teach them not only about birds, but about an endangered species that actually flies thousands of miles to visit us each year and what we as a community do to protect it. It is one of the many reasons why Goose Rocks Beach is so much more than a swimming pool and a sandbox. Carol Sherman.
Thanks, Carol. Let me just, you talked about the cat tracks and the dogs running loose. Just a reminder to those of you who let your cat out at night, and those of you who go within 200 feet of a marked plover area or don't have your dog on a leash, it is a federal offense. And the fine is up to $25,000.
That is correct.
And the reason we are so cognizant of the issue with the plovers is that a number of years ago, Scarborough, because of their dog ordinance and because of a dog, I don't know whether it was a plover that was killed or the nest that was destroyed, but the town was fined.
$12,000.
They finally negotiated the $25,000 down, but they also changed their dog ordinance. So I mean, it's not fun and games to say, oh, it's just a little bird and who cares? It's an endangered species. It is a crime, and it carries a really hefty offense, a very hefty fine. Okay, moving on. Just for your information, the town is in the process of hiring the CSOs. There probably will be 5, and they will have, I'm not sure whether, I think there is one already who was on the beach on the weekends, and there will be others on June 15th, and then the whole group will be there on June 22nd. They will have the same attire as they've had before, a blue t-shirt and brown shorts. The CSOs may be supplemented by uniformed policemen. There are 2 policemen who are assigned to schools during the school year, and depending on what is going on in town, they may at times be on the beach or at least on Kings Highway. So you may see more of a presence of uniformed policemen during the summer. And as I mentioned before, it is a difficult job to distinguish between the properties that have the reserved area and the ones who don't. Treat the CSOs with courtesy, and on the other hand, if you don't think they're doing their job, 967-2454 is the police station. And you know, if there are dogs running loose and the CSOs are not attentive to it, then the chief needs to know. So, and you know, as always, if there's an issue, if you don't call the police, they don't know, and that goes with fireworks and what have you. And we have it every year. People complain about the fireworks, but they don't call the police to say, hey, my neighbor is shooting off fireworks, or there's some down the street. You need to be proactive. And so far, the parking is limited to Kennebunkport residents right now. And so far, there have been 22 citations that have been written for people who were not residents of Kennebunkport. Okay, the next item is
Richard, just a question. What will be the hours of the CSOs?
6 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock in the evening, and there will be different shifts. I mean, we're not going to have 5
right, obviously.
at one time.
Terrific.
There are some
That's
that
very
come
good.
on at 6 o'clock in the morning, and some that then come on at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Very good. Thank you.
By the way, we do want to try and do I hope the same thing we've done other years of getting a brief, very brief meeting, socially distanced, of course, with each of the CSOs, and just put their pictures and a brief bio up on the Friends of Goose Rocks Beach Facebook site, so that people will get to know them a little bit better, and be able to
That's a great idea.
better interaction. So
we at our last meeting, we said that we were going to discuss the issue of daily permits, and it appears that maybe that's been taken out of our hands. There's going to be stickers sold at the general store and the kiosk. There was a concern about the daily trippers, day trippers. Now we have the beach immediately south of us in Kennebunk is opening, I believe, this Friday or Saturday.
Saturday.
Saturday, and they're going to be open without any restrictions. But I don't. From friends in Kennebunk, I know stickers have not been available so far, but I assume they're going to have daily stickers. So, is there any need to go over that issue? I mean, we said we would raise it. It's on the agenda. What's your pleasure?
So just that I
it doesn't
understand,
sound
so
like
what we're saying is that the stickers are going to be available starting when?
The 15th of
And
June.
they'll be sold at the beach at 2 spots and at Town Hall.
Correct.
Are they going to be sold at Town Hall?
Lori, isn't that correct? That you can purchase them at Town Hall, but not at the police department?
Correct.
Okay, it's news.
Any further discussion about the daily permits?
Seems no point.
Okay, then let's move on to the issue of group sports. We in our brochure, we've said group sports are discouraged. I know that some beaches have just prohibited them. Do we want to take a stand on that?
I like the term discouraged.
It's in print. I like it. I think it's enough to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have enough to
And
try.
if we start,
Exactly. We have enough to do.
yeah, I think if we go ahead and we don't yet know what we're going to be dealing with in terms of numbers and crowds, et cetera, and we can always revisit it if it turns out that group sports, between taking up additional room on the beach or issues of social distancing, seem to be creating a problem. But I don't think we have to discourage. Sounds fine for now.
Well, we have a number of parking spaces that were opened at the 1st of June, and what is it, Lori? There are going to be another group.
Another third on the 15th and the rest of them on July 1st.
Okay. I would, my own opinion is that we need to look carefully at the beach and whether or not people are social distancing. There are, between Kennebunkport and our surrounding communities, there are 100 cases of coronavirus that have been confirmed. We have people coming in from states that have a high incidence of coronavirus, like Massachusetts. And I think we need to be observant. I know that the town manager gets a report regularly. The police are viewing what is going on at the beach daily. The problem is we haven't had a lot of good beach weather, and there's been a question of how many people are going to come for rentals. We don't know whether, for example, the Tides is going to open up. Probably not. Between now and the 1st of July, I think we need to be vigilant. And if in fact there's congregation there, people need to be informed that it's their behavior that will rule in terms of whether the beach parking is open and whether the beach itself is open. And I know that Lori and the chair of the selectmen have the authority to limit the parking and to close the beach. And we just need to be, between now and the 1st of July, vigilant as to what is transpiring on the beach. Jen?
So it's it's tough to really know, are we like sort of the police here? Like, for example, I'm on the beach, and my house is on the beach, and there was a couple of nights ago, looked like about 10 teenagers all down there, close, having fun, enjoying an evening together as a group. And they were close to each other. There was no social distancing. Now, I don't know, maybe they're all staying in the same house. How do I know? But I did not feel comfortable. Like, do I call the police? I don't know. Like, that just felt like, is that my role? So I just sort of didn't do anything. And is 10 people okay anyway? Because we're allowed to meet with 10 people. So I feel personally awkward with it, because I don't want to be like this person going around going, oh, I saw there were 10 people on the beach who didn't look like they were maybe staying together. It's a weird situation. So I don't know what the answer to that is. I'm just saying that's what I observed and that's what I felt.
Yeah, well, but the town is clearly monitoring it regularly. And I think that's the first line of defense. But there may be a point in time where you or I or any other member of the committee or any resident in Goose Rocks may say, hey, it's getting out of hand. And then you just pick up the phone. Jen, it isn't the usual year. It isn't this. This is serious stuff. Okay, David, do we have anybody with their hands up? Good. We do not. Is there any other business? Anything else anybody wants to?
Can I just ask, for the beach use at this point, is it still just walking and swimming?
No, it's never been that. You're allowed to sit if you're the same family.
Yeah.
Somebody told me that a woman who had 2 children, who let the children play, she was sitting there watching them and she was told to get up.
Well, that person, whoever told her, was not informed.
Okay.
No, I don't know.
We can't help that.
Wait a minute.
I thought I'd mention it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So
I don't know. There was an instance, Sheila, there was an instance I know with my husband walking the beach, and he saw a woman with some young children who were sitting back close to the dune grass and was letting the kids run around in the dune grass. And he approached her and asked them, please to not let the children run on the dune grass. And she was rather annoyed. So
okay, maybe that was.
I don't know if it's the same person. I have no idea.
Yeah, I
but
don't
no,
either.
and I did know that. Yeah, the town, the Facebook site, the 3 Towns 1 Community, had recently put out information about the various beaches and their rules, and they included at that point Goose Rocks as only active walking, swimming. And I knew that was not the case, that we had never taken that approach, but I didn't want to tell them different.
Okay. Okay.
But it's never been in place here. So.
All right. Thank you.
Anything else? If not, a motion to adjourn.
Wait a minute. Whoa, Richard. Wait a minute. Excuse me, Richard. What about summer meetings?
Yeah.
Good catch. Okay. We normally have a summer meeting at the Goose Rocks Fire Station, one in July and one in August. I suspect that whatever meeting we will have, at least in July, will be on Zoom. And in the normal course, we have somebody doing a presentation. Should we just schedule a meeting and brief business, hopefully, and just have people ask questions and have comments?
That's taken the 2
I vote
hours
for
both
that.
times. I think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
The last couple of times we've had trouble actually getting the presentation in because there have been so much interest from people coming to just ask questions or make comments. And I think giving people an opportunity to do that is just what we should be doing this summer.
Okay, the town meeting is July 18th, and at that time, the Board of Selectmen usually choose their chair, and they also decide whether committee assignments and whether people want to, selectmen want to change or what have you, their committee assignments. So we may or may not have a new representative from the Board of Selectmen. That's their choice, not ours. So a meeting sometime after July 18th, is that okay?
Sure.
We have to check, Lori has to check the availability because, you know, we're not the only meeting. And
So Richard, I just want to also comment that this ability to meet virtually through Zoom for the beach committee expires 30 days after the state of emergency expires by the governor. So, you know, right now her state of emergency is to expire on June 11th. If she re-ups it, then you would have passed that. But so we're really waiting to see how that plays out.
so I assume that applies to the selectmen as well, planning board, the whole shooting match.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and so if it expires and we continue to have a 50-person limit, that will also be challenging for us to maneuver. So,
Well,
It'll
to-
be interesting
I
to
just
see
want-
if there's a recourse, you know, that towns can apply to
Yeah, can we
continue
ask?
in-
Can we put it
in
in?
an online format.
So it is a statutory requirement. And the governor has only allowed this under her executive orders because she has emergency powers.
I mean,
So
it's
is
a new
there any
era. This is a
question?
new world, and people, you know,
So-
it's so much
So
better.
I'm not,
Sorry.
I'm not disagreeing with anything that anybody's saying. But I am
Bureaucracy.
not, I have to have the legislature in place to even get somebody to consider a statutory change.
Yeah.
So just understand that's not something that's going to happen in the near term.
Well, do you know whether there's any discussion in the legislature of changing it? I mean, we're one of, you know.
The legislature is not meeting. And so I think right now people are really on the Maslow hierarchy of needs at the low level.
Yeah.
And so when we reach a higher level, I will let you know.
Okay.
Can we ask forgiveness instead of asking permission?
You Jesuit.
So
you.
I'm gonna abide by the statutes.
You're such a stickler.
No, we have 47 witnesses to what you just said.
Well, so in any case, one way or another, we will have a meeting subsequent to July 18th, and we'll just wait to see what transpires, whether we can have it virtually or whether we have to have it where we have to social distance and we have to limit the number of people.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether we have any place in town that would accommodate 50 people.
Socially distanced, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's to be determined. Now can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to,
Second. All right. Kate,
Yes.
John,
Aye, gratefully.
Joanne,
Aye.
Sheila,
aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
and I vote yes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye, everybody.